Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Welcome back to Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents with Sagi Shaked. Sagi is founder of Shaked Law Personal Injury Lawyers and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association. He's got a wealth of experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and complex litigation cases. I'm Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're tackling one of the most dangerous types of trucking crashes: accidents involving hazardous materials, from chemical burns to toxic exposure. Here's what victims need to know. Sagi, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
So what all kind of fits under this umbrella of hazardous material as it pertains to trucking?
Yeah, this is some of the most gruesome types of injuries that we see. So when you have hazmat or hazardous material, the short for it is hazmat, you think about explosives, gas, anything that's a flammable type of liquid, radioactive material, or corrosives. Those are the things usually you see. And when anyone thinks about dangerous materials, you're thinking about gas tankers on the road. This is where we see if they roll or there's a collision with that trailer portion that's holding that gas, it's going to be a nasty explosion where it just leads to horrific results for the people involved. We have a couple of those cases going on right now.
I would imagine there is some pretty strict guidelines for what these trucks have to be equipped with for safety concerns and all that. In your experience, when these types of crashes happen and chemicals get released, is it negligence, or is it just the crash was so bad nothing could have saved it from escaping, so to speak?
Yeah, it's kind of both of them. It's negligence, and then imagine a collision into a gas tanker. It's just never it's never good. So,
yeah, what can you do at the end of the day if you're going 65 miles an hour?
Yeah, or even we have one right now where our client didn't collide into the 18-wheeler, but was driving parallel to one, and another vehicle just cut off the 18-wheeler on the 95, and the 18-wheeler carrying the gas rolled, but our client had no time to stop because just right there happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and the poor guy completely burned his entire body. He lived for a couple of months, 2 months, a little over, and then ended up, unfortunately,
what a horrible way to go.
Yeah.
Awful.
But there's rules, and regulations. Like we talked about the Code of Federal Regulations, which the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has these rules and regulations, and the rules regarding hazardous materials. So if you get one of these cases with hazardous material, you want to look at 49 Code of Federal Regulations, section 100 through 185, and that's for hazardous materials, the regulations. You also want to look at the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. So it's not just the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. You also want to look at the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. There's also rules and regulations there as well when you're dealing with one of these gas tankers. And then also look at the Code of Federal Regulations. I know I'm giving you a lot of laws here, but I'm going to try to break them all down to you.
That's okay. You always make it easy enough for even me to understand.
I'm going to try. So 49 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 397, and that talks about transporting these hazardous materials. So those are if you got one of these cases, you need to look at those specific regulations, laws, or statutes, whatever you want to call them, but that will govern what that truck driver and broker and shipper all have to do for that specific load in that specific event.
Are these cases more difficult to investigate for you to, for the police, for you to investigate because of the contamination, because of the environmental cleanup, because of the extent of the damage, because of what they're carrying?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what happens is, in the cases that we have that are, explosions and then leading to a fire. So think about every vehicle starting in around 2008, 2009 has what we've heard as EDR, or electronic data recorder, or sometimes you hear about it as a black box. We all think about it on a plane. You hear that they have the black box data. But every car, and most motorcycles, not all, have black box data, and even trucks have black box data. And so what happens is when they go up in fire, a lot of that data is destroyed. So that takes away a portion of that piece of the puzzle that we always like to have in a case that
Mhm.
gives us information on, what really happened in the seconds before the crash. What was the speed of, let's say that's a car and a truck. What was the speed of the truck? And again, I have this in cases right now where the the dash cam totally destroyed. The black box data from the truck and the cars totally destroyed by the fire. All the vehicles went up in flames. Vehicles nearby went up in flames, and you can feel it even if you're driving nearby. I think on one of my socials, you'll see that there's a smoke ball that just a ball of fire that pops out even minutes after the fire starts. So be careful if you're near one of these events. Just drive as far away as possible. But all that data that we look for, electronic data, whether it's from the GPS, from the black box, from the dash cam. If it's not in the cloud by the time it gets burned, then that material is just gone because everything gets burned to the crisp. So it does make the investigation a lot harder. Also, a lot of times, we get skid marks in the roadways that, we can't see anymore because of all the gas that was burning. If it's gas that was what caused the burn, or is what's burning in the roadway, you might not be able to see the street, the scuff marks or the skid marks on the roadway to help tell the story. In one of our cases that we have going on right now, we're lucky that where the crash ended up in the median, the wall protected everyone coming from the other side of the highway from experiencing this violent explosion that occurred. My client, and two other people didn't get the benefit of that, but the people on the other side of the highway, luckily, that median wall saved them. So, and we were able to see the scuff marks and the road marks, and there was video about 2 seconds before the crash, which helps tell the story of what happened. And when that case concludes, we'll do a whole podcast on that. But it does make it a lot more difficult for us as the attorneys representing the injured party to put the story together. Now, it's still possible to put the story together. You just got to get out to the scene. And sometimes you're not called right away. So
Mhm.
you have to rely on what the police did and what their investigators did. And then sometimes rely on, people who took photos and videos from the scene and any eyewitnesses.
You brought up a good point before. If anyone's ever sees one of these accidents, don't stand around and look at it. Just go get away, because these chemicals are very volatile, and you don't want to be anywhere near this if something even worse happens. So
Yeah, I mean,
good good point bringing that up for
it's like
sure.
a fireball coming right at
Yeah,
you. It's
it, it's
dangerous.
it's so different than just a fire. It's you're talking about really noxious chemicals. So as far as liability goes, are there differences in cases like these, aside from the usual trucking carrier and stuff that we've talked about in the past?
So yeah, you're right. You're probably an expert by now on trucking, Kevin. But yeah, you would have the driver and the trucking company, and then depending on how the crash occurred, because you may have a products liability case against the tanker company if it didn't meet the requirements, for that product, for that container. So sometimes people, we all know, um, do shoddy work, or don't do work that's up to industry standards. So that's kind of a problem. It'll really depend case specific on if you can go after. The broker is always on the hook in these situations, especially if you have a driver that doesn't have the experience. What's from the compensation standpoint, you know how we have insurance for truck accidents. You're supposed to have insurance. And then if your insurance company plays games and doesn't want to pay, there's public liability insurance for $750,000. What's good about tanker cases, there's at least $5 million worth of insurance there. So that should be something to think about, because we all know there's cases. I think we spoke about one earlier today where a truck driver and uh, motor carrier didn't have any insurance, which is horrible. So
Hmm.
here, at least with tankers, that's very regulated. There's always going to be, I don't want to say always, but majority of the time, there's going to be at least $5 million worth of insurance money to go after to help the victims of these crashes. Now, just putting this out there, most of the time, the truck drivers for these specific types of trucks are good drivers. So we're not going to put it all on the truck drivers,
Sure.
but there are times where they're not.
And we've talked plenty of times in the past about people cutting off trucks and doing really, really, really dumb things around trucks and stuff. So yeah, certainly not putting it all on the truck drivers. Are there other agencies that get involved in cases like this that are not just the state agencies, but federal agencies as well?
Yeah, so there's the PHMSA, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, anytime, and the local state EPA, I guess, would get involved in these types of situations because you have cleanup costs.
Yeah.
The individuals that or the companies that are doing the cleanup, they're going to have a claim as well. They're going to want to get paid, and those cleanups, I can tell you, in one of the cases we have, is around $300,000 to clean up that much fuel. So it's not a cheap endeavor. Everyone's going to want to get paid for what happened to them. In this case, the person that's injured, the state has to clean up the materials, the companies that are cleaning it up. It's a whole mess when one of these things happen.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. If another aspect of this that we haven't talked about yet is there can be just exposure. There's fire, sure, but there's also exposure to chemicals that can have longer lasting effects or may not even show until later. How do you, as an attorney, make sure that victims, your clients, are compensated for the future health problems that they might not even know exist yet?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So, as an attorney, I believe the attorney has to act as a forensic analyst. You really have to look at your clients. You have to speak to your clients. You have to be in touch with your clients. If you're just handling the case and you have no communication with the clients, you really don't know what's going on with them. So, if you're actively listening, knowing what's going on and involved, and then you can take part in talking to them, you can find out what's going on with the clients. So, if clients have been exposed to the chemicals, whether they're breathing the chemicals or it went on their bodies, you want to get them to get checked out, because most of the time people don't know the long-term ramifications of having that exposure. So you want to make sure that they go to doctors that can help them get better. And then you want to get what's called a life care plan, so you can find out what are those long-term ramifications and present that to the insurance company. And if the case doesn't settle, you can use that to present it to the jury, so you can get your client full compensation for what will happen or most likely will happen in the future, given that whether they inhaled flames or had stuff go in their body or on their body.
You mentioned our last episode when we talked about that horrific crash in Florida, and the trucking company had a lot of problems. No insurance, shouldn't have hired this guy in the first place. In these situations with hazardous chemicals, are there better safeguards as far as ensuring that a trucking company do they need a specific license to carry these to ensure that they're doing everything they can to keep everybody safe?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll see the drivers who have those loads, have extra precautions being made by the companies. They're not just your regular truck drivers, because the hazmat is a little different. So they're going to be safer drivers that are having those vehicles. That's why I say you see a lot less of those crashes. Again, a lot of times it's not the truck driver that's at fault, but it can be that the truck driver is at fault as well. So again, I think there's more of a crackdown on hours of violations when you have these massive trucks holding very dangerous liquids and explosives on them that can cause major damage. So they're a little bit more stringent, the companies that are transferring these types of loads with their drivers.
It makes sense. You get the best drivers to drive these kind of loads, and that's, you know,
These drivers that are driving dangerous materials, they do random, the Department of Transportation will do random drug and alcohol testing. And that's under the Regulation 382-49, Code of Federal Regulations 382. So they know that these things can cause a lot more damage. So you see a lot more of those tests on these drivers. That's why I say they're a little bit safer than the other truck drivers. Not that I have anything against truck drivers. Again, some of them are really good drivers and are not the cause of accidents, but there are some that are, unfortunately, like the one in Florida that did that illegal U-turn, that are not good drivers or should not be driving. So, and one more tip, just so I forgot, that you will see a little H on their CDL license if they have a hazmat license, or an N for a tanker endorsement. So if you see that, if you don't see that and they're driving these trucks, you have a case against the trucking company for allowing that individual to drive. So that's why I say they have a little bit more stringent rules on them.
Do these cases typically take longer? Do they drag on for longer periods of time as a general rule?
The injuries are worse.
Yeah.
So they do take a little bit longer. Insurance companies like to fight. And then, there's certain situations depending on what happened. Like, we've seen cases where you have a hazmat truck driver, they're parking too close to a school, or a fire, where there could be a fire situation, and that can cause a lot of problems, because imagine that thing explodes near a school. Can you imagine what would happen? Or if it's near a fire, it can't park near there or be near there. So those are things that are, concerning, and the drivers just have to be more aware. That's why I say they're good drivers, or better drivers, when you're dealing with the explosive materials and the gas materials.
Mm-hmm. Wow. All right. Well, trucking companies that carry hazardous materials have a duty to protect the public, and when they fail, the consequences can be life-altering, as we've talked about today. If you or your family has been exposed in one of these crashes, visit shockheadlaw.com, speak with Sagi, and get the help that you need. This is Road to Recovery. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like our videos, leave us a review. We appreciate it. Sagi, always great chatting with you. Thanks so much for all the insight.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.